I arrived early. That's just how I am. Always have been. Show up on time, dress plain but proper, and don't take up more space than you've earned. The lawyer's office was colder than I remembered, maybe from the AC blowing right onto the seat they'd saved for me. Or rather, the seat they didn't save. There wasn't a card with my name on it. The table at the front, the one where the family sat, was full, neatly printed names on folded cards. Maribel Knox. Velma Halley. Uncle Bruce. Everyone was accounted for. Everyone but me. The assistant, young, red cheeks, clearly nervous, noticed me standing too long by the door. He looked around, grabbed a folding chair from the hallway, and dragged it next to a fake ficus plant. He muttered something like, "Hope this is okay," before retreating quickly. I didn't answer, just sat. The chair wobbled slightly. A coffee-stained folder had been set down at the makeshift spot. The name tag was blank, not even my initials. I folded my cane, rested it against my knee, and looked straight ahead. No one turned. No one waved. They never forget to remind me where I belong. Eldon Parrish shuffled some papers and tapped the table with a capped pen. Thank you all for being here. We're here to read the last will and testament of Truett Halley. My father. Gone 2 weeks. Maribel gave a soft, practiced sigh and dabbed the corner of her eye. Velma, my mother, or what's left of her, didn't look up, just kept her hands clasped like she was at church. The primary estate, Eldon read, including the family house, land parcel 7B, and associated contents, will be passed to Maribel Knox. There were nods, a few soft, well-of-course murmurs from the extended family. I caught someone saying, "She held the family up, after all." Another whispered, "She deserves it." I didn't move, not even when I felt sweat start to pool behind my knees. I looked at Maribel. She smiled. There was no mention of me. No pause, no sentence, just a skip. "So," Maribel said, turning just slightly in her chair, voice as clear as day, "does he get the leftover insurance? Maybe the dolls? Or is there a pity clause for the cripple?" It landed like a hammer. Someone snorted. Another chuckled, quickly covered with a cough. Eldon flinched but didn't stop her. No one did, not even Velma, who looked down harder. I didn't respond. I just reached under the table and adjusted the strap of my leg brace. The sound of Velcro was louder than any apology might have been. A flicker of shame passed through the room. But it wasn't theirs. It was mine. Maribel leaned back in her seat. Triumphant. Comfortable. My mind flashed back, my arms dragging her out of the burning car, her screaming, blood dripping from her scalp. Me pulling with everything I had, 8 years old, her legs stuck under the dashboard. My father yelling. Smoke. Heat. The sound of my own skin against metal. She forgot. They all did. Eldon cleared his throat, flipping another page. There are several addendums not read aloud today, but they will be reviewed separately and entered into the record. Now he was nervous. Eyes darting. That sentence wasn't in the script. I tilted my head, watched him, the slight shake of his hand, his voice cracking. They didn't expect me to know what that meant. But I did. It wasn't just the inheritance, it was the narrative, the version of history they polished and put in a frame, one where I didn't exist, one where I wasn't needed. They rewrote it and cut me out. I didn't make a scene, didn't raise my voice, just sat there as the words wrapped around the room like formaldehyde. As Maribel stood to thank everyone for honoring our father's legacy, I reached under the table again. My fingers found the edge of the metal brace. I traced the engraving, smoothed over by time and weight. One word, small but mine. Halley. I stood. I picked up my cane. I didn't say anything, but I smiled, just a little. The thing about being invisible, no one sees you coming. I arrived late on purpose. The hall smelled like lilies and lemonade, like every church gathering we'd ever had. Round tables, plastic tablecloths, too much potato salad. I kept to the side, watching everyone crowd around the projector. It wasn't until I saw her on the screen, backlit by childhood photos and patriotic music, that I realized what kind of tribute this was. Maribel's face at 5, in a yellow sundress, Maribel's prom picture, Maribel on Dad's shoulders at a football game. Their golden retriever, Buddy, made it into 4 slides. I didn't make it into any. Someone behind me, a cousin maybe, leaned in and whispered, "Was she an only child?" Then they laughed. Not at me, never at me, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't say anything, just stood there. Let the room freeze around me, not from anger, but because I'd been here before. Too many times, edited out of the family I'd bled for. I used to wonder if I ever really existed outside the pain. I found a seat at the far end of the buffet table. It wobbled slightly, like everything else they gave me. Kanan sat beside me, quiet, fidgeting with a napkin. His eyes flicked to the screen, then down to his hands. "I saw the earlier versions of the slideshow," he said under his breath. "You were in them." I turned slightly, just enough to hear, not enough to make it obvious. "I told her it wasn't right," he added, twisting the napkin. "She said, people want to see joy, not limps." My jaw didn't clench. My hand did, under the table, out of sight. Before I could reply, Velma appeared. She smiled like nothing was wrong, voice bright and clipped. "Why don't we let the past be the past today?" Kanan sat back, lips pressed together. Silence, once again, served on a paper plate. Maribel's voice rang out from the front of the hall, full of cheer and poise. As Daddy always said, he built 2 legacies, one in business and one at home. Applause. I didn't clap. She continued, "I'm proud to carry his name forward, to lead by example, and to remember him with the strength and grace he always admired. Not one mention of me, of my leg, of the fire, of the years that came after. A few more claps. I stared straight ahead, counting seconds, not for dramatic effect, just to keep myself from walking out. They've become professionals at rehearsing grief while editing the inconvenient parts. Did she remove me on purpose? Or worse, did she forget me altogether? Not being remembered hurts more than being hated. I excused myself quietly and walked out into the hallway. There was a wall of family photos, arranged in chronological order. My eyes scanned instinctively. The photo of me and Maribel, taken a week after the crash, was gone. Just a thumbtack hole where it used to hang. It had been a moment. I was in a cast, propped up on crutches. She had a bandage on her forehead, holding a little plastic trophy someone had given her for bravery. Dad had snapped it while we smiled, not because we meant it, but because we were told to. I turned to leave. A kid stood across the hall, maybe 7 or 8, holding a cup of lemonade, staring, not out of fear, just noticing. That kind of honest gaze only children have. I tipped my head and gave him a nod. He smiled. The past isn't just about what they erase. It's about who we decide to be anyway. I went back in. The room was already thinning out. I helped fold chairs. No one noticed. As I stacked the last one, Maribel passed by, close enough to speak low. "Thanks for not making it awkward today." I looked at her. Not through her. Not past her. At her. She turned away before I could say anything. But I wasn't planning to. It wasn't a mercy. It was a delay. As I turned to go, Kanan caught my elbow, slipped something into my jacket pocket. I didn't check it until I was outside, wind brushing across my collar. A folded napkin. Inside, one line, shaky handwriting, ink smudged like someone had thought twice. "You deserve to be seen." By the time I got home, the rain had already started. Not hard, just enough to remind you that the day wasn't done being heavy. I slid off my leg brace, set it by the door, and dropped my keys on the side table without looking. Silence settled over the house like dust on an old quilt. No one else was here. No one had ever been, really. I made my way into the guest room, storage technically, pulled out a cardboard box marked 1998 in faded marker. I hadn't opened it in over a decade. Didn't even remember what was inside, not exactly. The top layer was clippings, Channel 9 headlines, laminated sympathy cards, a few crumpled notes from neighbors I hadn't seen since high school. Tucked underneath was an old VHS tape. Label read, "Hallie Kids Saved." I stared at it for a while. My hands shook more than I'd expected when I slid it into the old player. The static cleared, the image blinked into place. There I was, skinny, bleeding, dragging my sister out of the wrecked car while flames curled up behind us. I could hear my own breathing in the room. No music, no commentary. Then came the caption: Hero's sister survives crash. My name didn't flash once, not even as a byline, not in passing. Just Maribel, looking stunned in a hospital bed, surrounded by balloons, flowers, and cameras. I watched it all the way through, not because I wanted to, but because it felt like if I looked away, I'd be letting them win. I didn't cry. I clenched my jaw so tight I had to massage it after. Later that night, the rain still tapping on the windows, I went down to the basement. The bulb flickered once before staying on, same as always. I walked past the tool cabinet, the camping gear, the faded Christmas bins. The old toy bin sat under the stairs. I pulled it forward, lifted the lid, and there it was. A porcelain doll, missing half its hair, dress scorched, face cracked. One leg melted into the torso. I remembered this one, Maribel's favorite, the one I grabbed before I pulled her out. She screamed when I dropped it in the grass like it meant more than what I'd just done. I picked it up gently. The leg was still fused, smooth and grotesque, like my own had once been when the seatbelt melted into my thigh. A memory crept back. Me in the hospital, tucking that doll under my pillow, hiding it so she wouldn't see it and feel bad, because even then, I knew she wouldn't want to remember what I gave up for her. They all forgot I bled. But I remembered every time I walked. Back upstairs, I was drying the doll with an old t-shirt when the phone buzzed. Voicemail. Velma. Her voice was soft but firm. I hope you won't bring up old wounds again. Your father's gone. It's time to let peace lead. I played it twice. Old wounds, she said, like it was a scratch, like my entire adolescence was a tantrum I refused to outgrow. I pulled out an old photo album, flipped through until I found the hospital pictures. My cast was covered in signatures, nurses, janitors, one from a doctor in big bubble letters, not one from family. I stared at it until my eyes burned, then I shut it and leaned back. There was a day I tried crawling out of the ICU just to see if anyone remembered I was there. I made it to the hallway before the nurse found me, said, "Your folks are just overwhelmed." She wheeled me back. No one noticed I'd gone. When people disappear long enough, you start inventing reasons why, just so it hurts less. I moved to the filing cabinet, pulled out one of Dad's old journals, pages filled with sketches of the property line, numbers, and notes about lumber orders. One page halfway through read, "Keep house in Maribel's name, but keep the land in D's. He earned the right no one else sees." I sat still for a long time. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't public. But it was something. A flicker. I grabbed a pen, scribbled in the margin. The myth. She was the miracle. The memory. I was the sacrifice. First time I'd written it down. Felt like pressing on a bruise. Didn't stop me. I pulled the VHS tape from the player, digitized the footage, labeled it Unseen Hallie Record, 1998. Created a new folder on my drive. For later. Added the digitized clip, a photo of the doll, and a scan of that note in Dad's handwriting. Lined them up in a neat column. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood they weren't going to do this for me. The past isn't a closed chapter. It's a quiet archive. And I'm the only one who still holds the key. The house was empty when I pulled up. I'd been told Maribel was at the Civic Center giving some speech about Dad's legacy. She always did love a microphone. The press was probably eating it up, her in pearls, tears welling at just the right moments. Meanwhile, I let myself in through the back door, keys still on the old ring Velma had never bothered to ask for back. It smelled the same. Old paper, lemon cleaner, and something faintly stale like forgotten air. The furniture was all still there, but covered now. Maribel must have had someone drape it. The trophies she hadn't boxed were still on the shelves, cheerleading, debate, a community leadership award she hadn't earned but sure enjoyed holding. I walked slowly through the dining room, where they'd once rolled my hospital bed after the fire. I remembered lying there, body wrapped in gauze, hearing them talk in the kitchen like I was furniture. On the mantel above the fireplace, there was a framed photo of a family vacation. I looked closer. My face had been cut out, clean, straight edge, no fraying, no mistake. Some houses don't haunt you with ghosts. They haunt you with what they erased. I moved toward the study. Eldon had given me the code earlier, said, "You might want to take a look in there." He didn't explain, and I didn't ask. The keypad blinked green, and the door clicked open. Dad's office hadn't changed. Papers still in stacks, ledgers, land tax maps, the smell of leather and cologne. A few drawers slid easily. One didn't. I yanked a bit harder. It creaked, then gave. Inside was a manila envelope. For DH. Only, do not destroy. I sat in his chair, opened it carefully. Inside was a scanned copy of an addendum to the will, handwritten, dated 6 months before he died. Property south of the creek belongs to Dresden. He paid for it in ways no one else did. I sat back. So he didn't forget. He just didn't fight for me out loud. I didn't know which was worse. I stood slowly, slid the envelope into my coat. As I reached for the light switch to leave, I caught sight of the credenza in the hallway. One drawer slightly open. I hesitated, then walked over. Inside, catalogs, old receipts, unopened junk mail, and one envelope, yellowed, without a stamp, addressed to my daughter, Maribel Knox. But inside, "My dear Dresden, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Ink faded, but legible. It wasn't hers, it was mine. At some point, someone, maybe Velma, maybe Maribel, had changed the label, redirected what was meant for me, like they always did. I thought back to the birthday they never showed up for. Velma had said, "We mailed something. It must have gotten lost." It hadn't. It had just been repackaged. I sat down on the bottom step and held the envelope for a while. No tears. Just heat behind the eyes and that familiar weight in my chest. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen to rewrite. I drove back to my place before the sky turned. Rain was on its way again. At home, I laid everything out on the table. The will addendum, the redirected letter, the photo of the burned doll, the video file from the fire, Dad's notes in the journal. I scanned the new documents, saved them in a folder labeled Legal Record, Truth Halley Version. I wasn't building a case for court. I was building one for memory. I wasn't here to take back what they stole. I was here to show they knew they were stealing. History, even the quiet kind, deserves its receipts. Before bed, I went down to the basement one more time. Not sure why. Habit, maybe. Near the fuse box, I spotted the patch of drywall behind the shelf. The corner was loose. I'd carved my initials there as a kid. Curious, I tugged gently. A notebook fell out. Slim. Dad's handwriting. Mostly boring. Budget notes. Monthly expenses. Then toward the back. Maribel will need the house. Dresden will need peace. Give him the land. Let him walk free. My chest tightened. I slid the notebook into my coat, replaced the panel, backed away slow. Not everything meant to be seen is left in plain sight. Some things are left in the walls. The call came around 10:30, just as I was finishing my second coffee and debating whether to go back through the old files one more time. Eldon Parrish's voice was tight, measured like he'd been rehearsing it in his head for hours. "If you've got a minute, Dresden, I think we should talk." It wasn't a request, not really, and he knew I'd come. The clouds were low over Athens that morning, the kind that hovered like they were waiting on someone else to make the first move. His office hadn't changed since Dad's last tax meeting, the same framed photos of judges and civic awards, the same oversweet iced tea sitting untouched on the corner of his desk. When I walked in, he didn't offer a seat, just nodded and pointed to the envelope already resting near his elbow. "Go ahead," he said. "You'll want to read it yourself." Inside, a photocopy of a handwritten will amendment, Dad's scrawl unmistakable, dated months before the funeral. It listed land parcels, asset breakdowns, residual business earnings. My name was there, clear as day. "I got it directly from your father," Eldon said. He told me to file it, but things got complicated. I didn't answer. Maribel brought in her PR rep, he added. Said it would confuse the narrative. Said the public needed clarity, not questions. Clarity, I echoed. You mean they needed the version where I don't exist? He winced. It wasn't illegal, just omitted. I reached back into the envelope. Another sheet, handwritten. This time from Eldon, folded twice, small enough to tuck in a pocket. At the top, in block letters. I'm sorry. You folded my future like a receipt, I said, staring at the creases. He didn't deny it, just looked down. By late afternoon, I was back home, documents scanned and tagged. I opened my folder, the truth they ignored, and dropped the files in alongside everything else. The footage, the doll photo, the letter that was never mailed. On screen, they formed a timeline, not a court case, not yet, but something stronger than memory. I never planned to be an archivist, but they made forgetting look too easy. That night, I went to the storage unit off Highway 99, the one that held what little Dad didn't let Maribel take first. Most of it was junk, boxes of receipts, broken garden tools, a cracked bowling trophy from '82. But in the back, wrapped in yellowed newsprint, was a small framed drawing. I knew it immediately. 9-year-old me had drawn it during one of those forced therapy sessions, crayons on construction paper, a stick figure with a cape, one leg bent awkwardly, standing in front of flames. I'd labeled it Dresden's Good Day, only now it read Daddy's Brave Girl. Same frame, same paper. But the title, redone, rewritten. Dad's handwriting, clear, bold. Someone had peeled off my label and replaced it with a lie. Even when I tried to be brave, they called it hers. I took the frame, brought it home, set it on the table beside the others. Then I printed a new label, in all caps. Still here. I slid it under the glass. Let it cover the old one. Then I placed the frame in an envelope marked, For Maribel. I didn't seal it. Didn't plan to send it right away. This wasn't a threat. It wasn't revenge. This was a reminder. I was here. I mattered. I remember. Outside, the wind kicked up. Thunder rumbled behind the ridge. I walked to the window, frame still in hand, and stared out into the gray. They built their legacy on silence, but I'm done whispering. There was no return address on the envelope, just a scrawl across the front. You forgot something. I opened it on the porch before I even stepped inside. The air was thick, fall creeping in, but not fully settled. A printed copy of the will addendum slipped out. Same handwriting, same phrasing, same date from months back. But this one had something new, a digital trail, time-stamped. It had been sent to Eldon and forwarded to Maribel, long before the reading, long before all of them pretended they didn't know. I didn't feel surprise. I felt clarity. Forgetfulness is an accident. Erasure is a plan. Inside, I scanned it immediately, dropped it into the folder with the rest. The truth they ignored. I created one more. When they force my hand, just in case. Later that evening, I got dressed. Nothing fancy, black slacks, a dark shirt. I wasn't going to make a scene. I just wanted to be seen. The event was already full when I arrived, a town fundraiser. Maribel was center stage, beaming, launching the Halley Foundation in Dad's name. Applause followed her wherever she went, cameras flashing like she'd just cured something. I didn't interrupt. I moved through the crowd, slow, steady, nodding here and there. I let people register me. Most smiled politely, unsure how to greet me. Some turned away, but I was used to that. Maribel spotted me mid-sentence. Her voice caught, just enough to break the rhythm. She recovered fast, though, always did. She looked right at me once. I looked back. That was enough. I stood in the back, hands clasped, letting her wrap up her speech about legacy and resilience. Outside, I needed air. That's when I heard the laughter. A group of young women, Maribel's circle, huddled around a phone, giggling too loud for the occasion. I slowed as I passed, something in their tone stopping me. That's the leg, right? One of them said. She said it was his actual one. My stomach turned. I stepped closer. On the screen, a photo from a Halloween party, a costume, a fake prosthetic leg, exaggerated and gaudy, covered in glitter and rhinestones, duct tape for straps. The caption read, "This year's most inspirational prop." One of them looked up. Her smile died instantly when she saw me. No one said a word. I didn't need them to. I used to think I gave my leg to save someone. Turns out, it was borrowed. For a joke. I went home without speaking to anyone. Back at my desk, I opened a new file and labeled it Legacy versus Record. Inside, I dragged every piece I had, copies of the addendum, Eldon's note, voice memos, the screenshot of the costume, each one a quiet truth they'd tried to bury. I drafted an email, not to Maribel, to the town council, the local paper, the legal board that oversaw probate matters. I didn't send it, not because I was afraid, because timing matters more than rage. I'm not burning down the house, I'm turning on the lights. Before bed, I walked into Dad's old workshop. One of the shelves had sagged years ago and never been fixed. I pulled out a screwdriver, tightened the brackets, ran my hand across the wood like it meant something. It wasn't about fixing furniture, it was about reclaiming space. In the reflection of the window, I saw myself, upright, balanced. When I stepped outside, the cane tapped sharp against the porch steps, not from weakness, but as punctuation. They built their legacy on lies. I'm rebuilding mine on what survived them. The first headline hit my inbox before I even made it to the kitchen for coffee. I didn't have to open the article to know who it was about. Maribel's name was in the subject line, front and center. Maribel Knox, the girl who survived, the woman who inspires. Underneath, a subheading wrapped in syrup, from childhood trauma to community leadership, how one woman turned tragedy into triumph. I clicked it anyway. The write-up was slick, filled with glowing quotes and old photos. There was even a line about her miraculous escape from a car fire at age 9. They used the word miracle. Again, my name? Nowhere. I scrolled to the bottom, checked the tags, the byline, the reprint info. Syndicated, picked up by 3 outlets in the county, pushed as a feature. There's nothing more dangerous than a good lie wrapped in nostalgia. I didn't comment, didn't share. I just opened my folder labeled Eventual and added the link. At 8:42 that night, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. One line of text. I think you should hear what your father said when no one else was in the room. There was an audio file attached. A voice memo, timestamped 5 days before his death. My hand hovered over the play button. Then I pressed it. The background was quiet, just the beep of hospital machines and the shuffling of sheets. Then his voice, raspy, tired, but clear. She'll never understand what he gave up. Dresden didn't just save her body. He saved her future. And I let them take that from him. Silence. Then a long breath. If he ever asks, tell him I saw it. All of it. I didn't cry. I replayed it 3 times. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one word in the center of the page. Witness. The next morning, I drove to the public library. The staff hadn't changed much, still the same faded reference signs, same buzz of the old copier. I asked to see the microfilm archive and pulled up the article from '98. Young girl escapes blaze. Brother also injured. The body text mentioned me once. Spelled wrong. I printed it out, brought it home, set it on my desk next to the one from yesterday's article. The contrast burned. The way history's written depends on who holds the pen or the microphone. I took photos of both and uploaded them into the timeline I'd been building. Underneath the voice memo, beside the will, near the doll. Later that evening, I sat in my home office, lights low, rain starting to tap against the glass. I replayed the memo one more time, syncing it up with the old baby monitor audio I'd pulled from Dad's hospital room. Same pause, same cadence, same exact words. I turned to his old notebook, flipped through the margins, found it. Dresden deserved better. That was it. No grand gesture, no courtroom drama, just one line, hidden between lumber orders and roof quotes. This wasn't just neglect, it was narrative, and I'm the last person left to undo it. I opened a blank document, titled it, "For the Record." I pasted in everything: voice memos, article screenshots, scanned documents, every piece lined up in order. Then I emailed it to myself. Scheduled the message to send in 48 hours, just in case. I printed a copy, slipped it into an envelope, to whom it should have always concerned. I sealed it, set it next to the photo of the burned doll. They rewrote the story. I just footnoted the truth. I moved to close my laptop. Just as the screen dimmed, a new email appeared, from someone inside Maribel's camp. I got there 20 minutes early, not out of nerves, just habit. The council building still smelled like old wood and window cleaner, and the folding chairs made the same squeak they always had. The plaque out front was new, though, dedicated to the Halley family legacy. Right beneath it, a smaller line, in honor of Maribel Knox. They didn't invite me to this ceremony. That was their first mistake. Maribel was already working the crowd. Handshakes, compliments, polite laughter. She wore a light blue blazer, something that read relatable but still moneyed. I took a seat in the back row. No name tag, no welcome, just how they liked it. When she stepped up to the podium, the room leaned in. She spoke like she'd done it 100 times. Maybe she had. Legacy is not built in a moment, she said. It's built in resilience, in grace, and in love. She mentioned Dad, the fire, her miraculous survival, said nothing about how she got out, who pulled her. I let her finish, waited until the clapping softened, then I stood. Before we all leave tonight with the wrong version of the story, I'd like to share a few truths that were left out. The room went still. I didn't shout, didn't gesture. I walked to the AV table, handed over a USB, and nodded toward the screen. The lights dimmed. First, the news clip, black and white footage. Me, 8 years old, dragging her out of the wreckage, my face bloody, her limp body in my arms. Then the headline, "Hero Sister Survives Crash." Next slide, side-by-side scans. One from 1998, one from 3 weeks ago. Both told the same lie. Then the Halloween photo. A prosthetic leg, glittered and taped. The caption, "This year's most inspirational prop." And last, the audio. Dad's voice from the hospital, weak, honest. He gave up more than any of us ever admitted. No music, no flair, just silence. People shifted. A cough somewhere. The click of a pen hitting the floor. I didn't speak again. The screen went black. Then a phrase appeared. "Legacy is earned, not performed." I left it at that. Afterward, in the hallway, I passed by Rustin, Maribel's ex, and her. They didn't notice me right away. Rustin said, "I told you he had it. Should have apologized back when he lost the damn leg." Maribel's voice snapped back without thinking. He was never supposed to be anything but a footnote. I stopped walking. Looked back. Said nothing. Didn't have to. They knew I heard. And now, so did everyone else. I didn't wait for applause. There wasn't any. I stepped outside into the night air. A few people nodded as they passed. Some avoided my eyes. One man gave a tight smile. An older woman reached out and squeezed my forearm, then walked on. I didn't need words. As I crossed the parking lot, a kid tugged at his mom's sleeve. "That's him," he said. "That's the man from the video." I smiled, not for attention, but because, finally, I was seen. They spent their lives polishing a story that never belonged to them. I just cracked it open. When I got home, the house was still and soft. Rain had passed through while I was gone, leaving the air thick and the steps damp. On the desk sat the envelope I'd labeled weeks ago, "To whom it should have always concerned." Only now, someone else had gotten to it. Inside was a printout of my full story, my notes, my evidence, annotated in a different handwriting. Canaan's. Tucked on top was a post-it, simple yellow with 5 words. "You don't need to prove anything anymore." I didn't cry, but I folded the pages slow, careful, slid them into the drawer where the USB used to be, Sometimes validation doesn't come from victory. It comes from the person you thought would never see you. Later that afternoon, I sat back down at my desk, opened a new folder on the computer. I named it Forgiveness File. Not for them. For me. I opened the draft email my father never sent, the one I found tucked behind a drawer, too late to change anything. It read like a whisper. I saw your strength in silence, your loyalty even in exile. I failed you not by forgetting, but by fearing your light would outshine mine. I highlighted that line. Then I printed it. No edits, just bold text on white paper. I walked to the closet, opened the door, and taped it behind my suits, hidden like the man who wrote it, but no longer ignored. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, it's about remembering without rage. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail, the town's annual art gallery showcase. This year, the Halley family had donated a mural. I went, not out of spite, not for closure, just to see what they'd built without me. The mural was huge, wall length. Maribel's face in full color, Truett in charcoal. A small blank space next to them labeled Legacy in Progress. My name wasn't anywhere. I approached the curator. Didn't raise my voice. I brought something that should be here. I handed over a frame, black velvet backing, brass plate. Inside, the burned porcelain doll's leg. The curator read the plate. Sacrifice isn't always framed, but it's felt. She didn't say anything, just nodded. I walked through the room. No crowd, no flash. A few folks nodded as I passed. One woman leaned over to her husband and whispered, "That's the real story. I just wish we knew sooner." Kanan joined me quietly. "You showed more grace than any of them deserved," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't do it for grace. I did it so the story wouldn't outlive the truth. I stepped outside. The air was cooler now, easier to breathe. Back home, I sat alone at the kitchen table, pulled the brace from beside the chair, ran my fingers over the name etched in the metal. Halley. I grabbed the carving pen, etched another line below it. Dresden, son of no silence. I strapped it on, stood tall, and walked into the night, not to be seen, but to feel whole on my own terms. Legacy is not what they remember you for, it's what they can't erase. I turned off the porch light, no spotlight needed anymore.